The weight of silence. Captain Marcus Vance stepped through the airlock of the UN Atlas, his boots echoing against the metal corridors, as he made his way to the observation deck. Through the reinforced viewport, the dying world of Falrin hung, like a wounded jewel against the star-scattered void. Once, this planet had pulsed with the sophisticated cities of the Valari, crystalline spires that caught light and transformed it into something approaching music. Now, only ruins remained, their surfaces dulled by centuries of war and neglect. "Captain," came the voice of his chief science officer, Dr. Kieran Moss, approaching with a datapad clutched in his weathered hands. "The final sweep teams have completed their archival work. We've recovered approximately 93% of the remaining cultural artifacts, historical records, and genetic samples. The Valari civilization will be preserved in our databases." Marcus nodded, but something cold settled in his stomach. Preserved. The word felt inadequate, like trying to capture a symphony in a single note. He'd spent 3 months overseeing this operation, watching his teams carefully catalog the remnants of a species that had once reached for the stars. The Valari had been poets, philosophers, architects of impossible beauty. They'd built cities that grew like living things and created art that could make hardened soldiers weep. And now they were gone. "Sir," Dr. Moss continued, "there's one more thing. The survivor we located last week, Sephira, she's requested to speak with you personally before we depart." Marcus had heard about her, of course, the last Valari. They'd found her in the ruins of what their translators called the Temple of Av, echoing memories, surrounded by the crystalline memory cores that stored her people's history. She'd been alone for over a decade, the final guardian of a dead world. Where is she now? "Habitat Module 7. We've tried to make her comfortable, but—" Dr. Moss trailed off, his expression troubled. "Captain, she's different from what we expected." The Valari were known for their emotional restraint, their philosophical acceptance of fate. "But she... there's something desperate about her. Something that makes my team nervous." Marcus understood. Facing extinction could drive even the most rational being to desperation. "I'll speak with her immediately." As he made his way through the ship's corridors, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation would be different from the diplomatic exchanges he'd grown accustomed to. The weight of an entire species' legacy pressed down on him, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that nothing, not his career, not his carefully ordered life, would be the same after today. The door to Habitat Module 7 slid open with a soft hiss, and Marcus stepped into a world transformed. The impossible request. The Habitat Module had been converted into something that resembled a Valari dwelling, soft, curved walls that seemed to breathe with bioluminescent patterns, furniture that appeared grown rather than built. But it was the figure in the center that commanded attention. Sephira stood nearly 7 feet tall, her form elegant and ethereal in the way only the Valari could achieve. Her skin held the faint luminescence of her people, shifting between pale silver and deep blue as emotions played across her features. Her eyes large, multifaceted, like cut gems, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see directly into his soul. "Captain Marcus Vance," she said, her voice carrying the musical cadence that made Valari speech so distinctive. "I have been waiting for you. I'm honored to meet you, Sephira. I want you to know that humanity holds your people in the highest regard. Your civilization's contributions to art, philosophy, and science will be remembered and studied for generations." A sound escaped her, not quite laughter, but something bitter and hollow. "Remembered, studied. Pretty words, Captain, but they are the consolation prizes given to the dead." She moved closer, her movements fluid as water. "I did not ask to meet with you so that you could offer me the comfort of academic immortality." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What can I do for you?" Zephyr's expression shifted, and for a moment, Marcus saw not the composed survivor he'd expected, but something raw and desperate. Your species and mine, we are not so different as you might think. Our genetic structures, our biochemistries, they are compatible. This was discovered during the Harmony Accords 3 centuries ago, when our peoples first made contact. I'm aware of the historical records, Marcus said carefully. There were diplomatic marriages, cultural exchanges, children, Zephyrah interrupted, her voice sharp. There were children, Captain. Very human hybrids who carried the best of both species within them. They were few, but they existed. They thrived. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Marcus understood where this was heading, and every instinct screamed at him to end this conversation before it went further. Zephyrah, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, I am not suggesting, Captain. I am asking. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the desperate hope burning in her crystalline eyes. Help me save my people. Not just their art, not just their philosophy, their blood, their future. One child, Captain. One hybrid child who could carry the essence of the Valari into tomorrow. Marcus felt the weight of the universe pressing down on him. That's impossible. The regulations, the political implications. The regulations were written by people who never watched their entire species die, Zephyrah said, her voice breaking, who never held the responsibility of being the last voice of a civilization. I am asking you to help me give birth to hope itself. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of extinction and the impossible promise of renewal. The weight of decision. Marcus sat in his quarters, staring at the report that had arrived from Earth 3 hours after his meeting with Zephyrah. The Terran Council had been unambiguous. Complete the archival mission and return immediately. No exceptions, no delays, no complications. But they didn't know about Zephyrah's request. A soft chime announced a visitor. Come in. Commander Lydia Kane, his second in command, entered with her usual efficient stride. Her dark eyes immediately fixed on the untouched meal on his desk, and Hor, the tension in his shoulders. You look like someone who's been asked to rewrite the laws of physics, she said, settling into the chair across from him. Word is spreading that our guest made quite an impression on you. Marcus looked up, studying his oldest friend's face. Lydia had served with him for 8 years, through first contact situations that would have broken lesser officers. If anyone could understand the magnitude of what he was facing, it would be her. She asked me to help her have a child, he said simply. Lydia's eyebrows rose. Well, that single quotes S.direct. I take it this isn't about adoption services? She wants to create a hybrid, human Valari, a living bridge between our species that could carry her people's genetic and cultural heritage into the future. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. And according to the historical records, it's biologically possible. But politically suicidal, Lydia finished. The Terran Council barely approved this mission. If word gets out that we're playing God with extinct alien genetics, I know. Marcus stood, pacing to the viewport where Thalrin hung in space like a dying ember. But Lydia, I've spent 3 months watching my teams catalog the death of an entire civilization. The Valari created beauty that made our greatest artists weep. They solved mathematical theorems that our best minds still struggle to understand. They looked at the universe and saw poetry where we see only physics. And now they're gone, Lydia said softly. Marcus, I understand the weight of what she's asking. But think about what you're considering. This isn't just about biology. It's about playing with the fundamental nature of 2 species. What if the hybrid can't integrate into either society? What if it becomes a reminder of loss rather than a symbol of hope? Marcus turned back to her. What if it becomes something greater than either of us could imagine? They sat in silence. For a moment, the weight of the decision settling between them like a physical presence. "There's something else," Marcus said finally. "The genetic compatibility between our species wasn't accidental. The research teams found evidence that the Valari and humans share a common ancestor, something that lived millions of years ago, before either species developed interstellar travel. We're not just compatible, Lydia. We're family." Lydia's expression shifted, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Family doesn't abandon family to extinction." "No," Marcus agreed. "It doesn't." A new voice interrupted them, Dr. Moss, over the comm system. "Captain, you need to see this. Zephyra has done something to her habitat module. The readings we're getting, they're impossible." Marcus and Lydia exchanged glances, then hurried toward habitat module 7. Whatever Zephyra had done, Marcus suspected it would make his decision for him. The ritual of remembrance, corridor leading to habitat module 7, hummed with energy that made the ship's sensors flicker and dance. As Marcus and Lydia approached, they could hear something that shouldn't have been possible: music. Not the mechanical reproduction of recorded sound, but living music that seemed to resonate. From the walls themselves, Dr. Moss met them at the door, his face pale with wonder and worry. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever she's doing in there, it's affecting the ship's systems. The biological sensors are detecting life signs that don't match any known species." "Her ancestors," Marcus said quietly, understanding, flooding through him. "She's communing with the memory cores." The door slid open, and they stepped into a transformed space. The habitat module now pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to move with deliberate purpose. The air shimmered with what could only be described as presence, the weight of countless lives, memories and dreams made manifest. Zephyra stood in the center of the room, her form surrounded by floating crystalline structures that sang with harmonic frequencies. Her eyes were closed, but tears of pure light traced paths down her cheeks. Around her, translucent figures moved in a stately dance, the shadows of her people, called forth from their stored memories. "The ritual of remembrance," she said without opening her eyes. "The final ceremony of the Valari. When the last of our kind faces extinction, they call upon the spirits of all who came before to witness the final choice." The ghostly figures turned toward Marcus, and he felt the weight of their attention like a physical force. Millennia of history, love, loss, and hope focused on him with an intensity that made his knees weak. "They want to know," Zephyra continued, her voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't have been possible for a single throat, "if humanity will be the ones to carry us forward, or if we truly die here, alone in the dark." Marcus stepped forward, feeling Lydia's hand on his shoulder in support. "What does the ritual require?" "Truth," Zephyra said, opening her eyes. They now glowed with the same light as the memory cores, reflecting the combined wisdom of our entire species. "The truth of what you choose, and why you choose it. The ancestors will judge not just your decision, but the heart from which it comes." The translucent figures pressed closer, and Marcus could feel their individual presence as scientists who had mapped the stars, artists who had painted with light itself, philosophers who had touched the fundamental nature of existence. Each one had lived, loved, and died believing that their species would continue. Now they waited to see if their faith had been misplaced. "I choose to help you," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the transformed space. "Not because of regulations or politics, but because no parent should have to watch their children fade into nothing. Because the universe would be a smaller, darker place without the light of the Valari in it." The ghostly figures began to move faster, their dance becoming more complex and joyful. The light in the room intensified, and Marcus felt something shift in the fundamental nature of reality around them. "The ancestors accept your choice," Zephyra said, and her voice now carried the weight of countless generations. "But they offer you a gift, Captain Marcus Vance. Not just the chance to create new life, but to understand what you are truly preserving." The light engulfed him, and suddenly Marcus could see through the eyes of the Valari their art, their philosophy, their dreams for the future. He understood finally what they truly were, and what humanity would gain by saving them. It was worth any price. The dawn of tomorrow 6 months later, Marcus stood in the medical bay of the UN Atlas, watching as Dr. Evelyn Cross ran her final scans on the small form cradled in Zephyra's arms. The child neither fully human nor fully Valeri, but something entirely new gazed up at the world with eyes that held the depth of ancient wisdom and the wonder of absolute innocence. "Ether," Zephyra whispered, speaking the child's name like a prayer. "Born of two worlds, child of the stars." The infant's skin held the faint luminescence of the Valari, but her features were a perfect blend of both species. When she looked at Marcus, he saw recognition there, not just of his face, but of his choice to give her existence meaning. "The genetic integration is perfect," Dr. Cross reported, her voice filled with amazement. "Not just compatible, but enhanced. She has the longevity of the Valeri, the adaptability of humanity, and neural pathways that suggest cognitive capabilities beyond either parent species." Marcus nodded, but his attention was fixed on the child. In the months since the ritual, everything had changed. The Terran Council had initially been furious, but when the preliminary reports about Ether's unique capabilities reached them, fury had turned to fascination. A new species, born from the union of two old ones, carrying a potential for abilities that neither could achieve alone. "She's not just a hybrid," Zephyra said, seeming to read his thoughts. "She's evolution itself. The next step for both our species." Commander Kane approached with a datapad. "Captain, we've received clearance from Earth. The synthesis project has been approved. They're offering full funding and resources for raising and educating Ether, with the understanding that she be free to choose her own path." Marcus smiled. "And what about you?" he asked Zephyra. "What will you do now that your people have a future?" The last Valari looked down at her daughter, and for the first time since Marcus had met her, she looked truly at peace. "I will teach her the songs of our people, show her the dances of starlight, tell her stories of the cities that touch the sky, and when she's old enough, I will take her to see the ruins of Thalrin, so she understands what was lost and what was preserved. And then I will help her build something new, not just Valari, not just human, but something that honors both while becoming something greater." Zephyra's eyes met his, and Marcus saw the spark of hope that had driven her to make her impossible request. "The universe needs new kinds of wonder, Captain. New voices to sing the songs of existence." As if responding to her mother's words, Ether made a sound, not quite a cry, not quite a song, but something that seemed to resonate with the very structure of the ship around them. The lights dimmed and brightened in response, and for a moment, Marcus could have sworn he heard the distant echo of Valori music. "She's going to change everything," he said quietly. "Yes," Zephyra agreed, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a promise kept. "She is the answer to the question my people asked when they first reached for the stars. What comes next?" Marcus looked at the child, at Ether, the bridge between worlds, the impossible made manifest through hope and courage. She was the proof that sometimes the most important choices were the ones that seemed impossible, and that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology or its weapons, but in its willingness to extend a hand to those who needed it most. The last Valari had asked him for one impossible thing, and together they had made it possible. The end.